Trigger warning, this podcast contains mature themes and discussions of cults, manipulation, and trauma. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults and human trafficking, where we expose the dark side of control, coercion, and the human stories behind them. I'm Anonymous Andrew, a podcaster and investigator.
And I'm Melody, a cult survivor and advocate for awareness and healing.
Welcome back to another episode of Cultimatum, the culture of cults and human trafficking. And my name is Anonymous Andrew, and with me tonight is my co-host, Melody. Melody, who do we have on the show tonight?
Tonight we have Shannon Avery Briggs and John D. Briggs Jr., a married couple. They are a transformational resilience coaches who know firsthand the challenges of leaving a high control group. Shannon and John walked away from the Jehovah's Witness organization, and they now dedicate their work to helping others do the same. Through their coaching, they focus on rebuilding identity, restoring emotional safety, and learning to trust yourself again after programmed thinking. They also have a YouTube channel called Deservingly You, where they bring insight, empathy, and tools for healing. Shannon and John, welcome to Cultimatum.
Thank you so much, and appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thanks. This is great.
Absolutely our pleasure. Where would you like to start your story? Did you two meet in the Jehovah Witness cult?
I'll let you start.
Well, I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and then as a young teenager, I had been abused actually through my entire childhood by my stepfather, and indoctrinated into the cult. Nothing was ever done about the abuse. So as a young teenager, I began abusing drugs and alcohol. Get involved with fornication, which is highly looked down upon in the all that cult. And so I eventually was never baptized at that point, so I wasn't disfellowshipped. They announced me from the stage as bad association. I was about 15. And so, as you may have heard before, I did try to go back a few times, but I was shunned. Nobody would talk to me. My family turned their back on me, everyone but my mother.
Even as an unbaptized, he was not a publisher at all, an unbaptized publisher, and yet he was still shunned.
An unbaptized publisher, meaning I didn't commit my life to the ministry and whatnot. They still announced me as bad association. And you can probably imagine or remember how difficult it would be for a young person to go somewhere like that and everyone just ignore them, everyone they've ever known, their family, their friends. And so I tried a couple of times, and then I went the other way. And I was in what they call the world, right? For close to 30 years, abusing alcohol and drugs. I ended up in jail, going to prison eventually.
How old were you at this time?
I was about 15 when they announced me as bad association.
Okay.
And so I left. I tried to go back, like I said, a couple times, but nobody would talk to me, and my family turned their back on me. So I already had friends on the other side, you could say, the dark side.
It's worldly people.
So silly.
Yes, worldly people. And so I just dove deep in with all that, and I became heavily involved with drugs and alcohol, which just progressed over the years. And eventually I ended up a criminal, and doing a lot of jail time. Meth was my final drug of choice, which I battled for a good decade. But I ended up going to jail for about a 2-year stretch in the end. And during that entire time, I still was in fear of Armageddon was going to come at any time, right? Because that's what we were taught. It was part of the indoctrination. I was a bad person, not worthy. That just fed my addiction over the years to kill those feelings of not good enough, and the fear. So, but that last stretch in prison for the 2 years, the Jehovah's Witnesses were in there. There was a group of brothers in there who I met, got close to them, and but when I got out, I ended up going to the Kingdom Hall, and 3 days later, that's where I met Shannon. 3 days after I got out. in
Wow.
2008, September of 2008. No, August 2008. And we were married in December of that year.
Wow. So, Shannon, how
Okay.
did you get involved? Andrew's got questions.
Yeah. Well, let's let's take a step back. So, at 15, you left JW disfellowshipped, or
Was not, because I was not
you're
baptized.
not baptized, right? Okay.
They announced me as bad association from the state.
So you're thrown out, and from my learning of the cult, and especially JW, because we've done many JWs, they tell you when you leave. So at 15, you didn't go to another family, and nobody adopted you. No, you didn't go into the foster system. You went out and lived on the streets? Did you?
I actually stayed with my mom and stepdad for a short, brief time. Like I said, my mom didn't shun me. Never did.
Is
What I
that the
did do,
stepfather that abused you?
yeah. And what I
Okay.
did for a short time, just to be clear, it was physical, emotional, and verbal abuse, extreme. After a short time after being kicked out of the organization, I went and lived with a friend of mine and his mother for actually him and then another friend and his parents over the course of a couple years. And then I ended up, going from there. Nobody adopted me. No, to answer your question, not officially.
Okay. Well, the point I'm getting at is that when many cults, including JW, will teach that if you leave them, you will go into the world of crime and drugs and alcohol, or get hit by a bus and all this horrible stuff, or the lake of fire, whatever the cult is, and whatever the damnation that you might stumble upon if you leave. And in your case, it happened. So we've heard some people who did it.
I
They
know.
came out, but you got involved in drugs. By the way, I'm in recovery, so I got 10 years. Yeah, so I'm kind of this is kind of why I want to tap into this with you a little bit.
I got 12 and a half years now.
Excellent. Okay. So you found that dark side and you
Absolutely.
ran with it. You got caught. You went to prison, came back out, and then you went back to JW. They took you back. Why? Because did they think that you walk us through that? Because I know to get back in there, if you weren't baptized, what?
Well, actually, nothing from the past was ever brought up. It's like the old group that excommunicated me back in 1982 was no longer around, and those old files were just never consulted, you could say.
They also changed the rules by them.
Yes.
They changed the
Okay.
rules.
There was no questions about my past that was
It was
brought
kind
up.
of swept under the rug.
Yeah.
They just forgot about it. Just okay, good.
You
Okay.
got a clean
By
slate.
then,
Yeah, I
but
did.
by then too, it was like if you were a teenager and were identified as an unbaptized publisher, then they could announce you. But there was no reason. He wasn't the only connection that he had was that his family was in the organization. And yet they announced his name from the stage when his name really wasn't in any of the books except for being in the family. Does that make sense?
Well, their reasoning was I was well known, had a lot of friends, and so I did actually have some influence with other kids.
And when you were released from prison, was it prison or jail? Because
Prison.
this is the difference. Was prison. Okay. Was that your first thought? Let me go back to the Kingdom Hall? Or
When I was in prison, like I said before, there was a group of brothers there, a dozen or so, and elders from the outside actually brought the meeting in twice a week because there was an altar. There was not an altar, but a small little church there where they had different types of services, different denominations, and our meetings were one of them. And so I automatically gravitated toward them, and I was actually going to get baptized there, but I ended up getting in a physical altercation, and I sat in solitary confinement for just over 8 months.
Wow.
And so that they from solitary confinement straight in the back of a cop car, and they dropped me off at the Greyhound bus station.
Were you introduced to recovery in prison? As JW probably came in and did their thing, the 12-step companies, the 12-step fellowships come in, like NA and AA and all the A's come into prisons and do their meetings.
Actually, where I was, I don't remember that being. And I think
Really?
I was already very familiar with 12-step, and I probably would have went. But I just don't recall because it was 20 years ago.
Okay.
But they put him right after he got out. So he got out in April, and then
August.
August. I was thinking A. So when he got out, they put him in was it a 90-day or 30-day program, like right away.
Yeah.
Like the rehab.
Yeah. So he was an inpatient. So that's how where we kind of started getting to know each other. We had
All right,
met
take it from there. Okay.
in a book study, and we started writing back and forth. But I was raised around the organization. When I was about 5, my mom decided we weren't going to celebrate Christmas anymore. But it wasn't until I was in middle school that they started taking it a little bit more serious. I was having challenges with my relationship with my parents, and my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And so that's when he started taking the religion a lot more serious. And then when I was 16, my parents, because of the relationship that we had, decided to turn custody over to my sister. And so I moved about 100 miles away from from them into her home. And that's where I got the real picture of what being in the organization was more about the service, about having the 3 meetings a week, and then starting to learn about it. And then when I graduated from high school, though, I was ready to party. And so I lived out on my own, but I kept getting visited by different people in the congregation at my job. It's like, we miss you, we miss you, we miss you. And I ended up in a bad relationship. And so, that perfect storm that can happen. So somebody that my brother knew, pioneer that my brother knew, he sicked her on me. And so she would come over all the time. So when I ended up brokenhearted from this relationship, I ended up starting to study the Bible. And then I decided that I wanted to move from Montana. So I moved from Montana out to Seattle and met my husband the very first month that I was there. We got married probably about 6 months later. And a month after we were married, we witnesses came to the door. So we started studying. This was not John, of course. And the other thing that happened that very first month was the first time that he hit me. And so that ended up being an abusive relationship that went on for 11 years. And it got to the point where by the end of the relationship, I basically went from elder to elder to elder to elder to say, this is what's happening, what I need help. And I would get you're not being submissive. What are you doing to set him off? You just need to pray to Jehovah more. You need to do those types of things.
What makes you so special?
And at one point I even had a black eye and went to the hall. And, like I said, I had gone from elder to elder to elder to try to get help, and I wasn't getting the help that I needed. And they were accusing me of actually taking the information as well and making it up and applying it to my life. And a short period of time after one of the memorials, my husband, I had started bathing the children. That was done wrong. I accidentally burned dinner. And so he got very, very abusive that night. And by the end of the night, he had threatened to kill me and the children. And so I went to the elder's house, and he basically, I remember him standing like in the kitchen with like his arms folded and stuff. And like, what are you going to do? And I was like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? It's like, where are you going to go? Because I didn't have any family. The nearest family that I had was like 250 miles away. And I didn't have any money. I didn't have any credit cards. And so we ended up, fortunately, my I called my ex-husband's brother, his wife, and said, can we come and stay? And initially, my brother-in-law said no, because he knew what he was capable of. He knew what his brother was capable of. But she said, "No, we're bringing her and the kids over." So that kind of started a path of like really this toxic, like the fruition of that toxicity. And about that time too, I had just started a new job. And I come home one day and he's not there. The kids aren't there. And so I get a phone call from that same elder that wasn't there to help me at all. And he goes, "Do you know where they're at?" And I said, "No." And he says, "Well, he's in jail and the kids are over at so and so's house." And so what I didn't know is the night that he had threatened me, he actually got a court order. They put a, whatever you call them. I don't know that. I'm not familiar. Basically, he had to go to court because of the domestic violence, and the judge sentenced him to 3 years. And I had just started this job, and so was very codependent at the time, and did what a lot of codependent people might do, and went down to the corner store and bought 2 40-ouncers, and came home and proceeded to get blasted. Called my boss, my brand new spanking boss, at 2:00 in the morning, and left a message on her voicemail. And I said, "Please call me when you get in the office." So she called me and she goes, "What's going on?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I can't come back. I can't come in today. I'm still drunk." And she's like, "What the heck?" And so I told her, explained what had happened and everything. And so she goes, "I'll see you tomorrow." So I come in the next day and my head is hung low, my tail between my legs and everything. She goes, She goes, "You have nothing to be ashamed of, but this will not happen again. And you're going to go to the employee assistance program." And so I went to the employee assistance program, and that's where I met my counselor, and he changed my life. And so I started learning about domestic violence. I started seeing how it was strategic and the things that there was a cycle to it. And you could see what was going to happen, just kind of even being able to recognize where the relationship was in the cycle. And eventually, because of being within the organization, the only way that you can divorce is by breaking the marriage vows, you know. And once again, the lack of self-trust, the lack of support, those types of things, that was the choice that I made, was to break the marriage vows. And so I was disfellowshipped. We did get divorced, and after I was divorced and I wrote to headquarters back in New York, and I said, "Please help these brothers because they do not understand what domestic violence is. They don't understand how it works, and it is creating an environment that makes domestic violence thrive because you guys don't know what you're doing. They're not knowing what they're doing and stuff." And the response that I got back was that I was being vindictive for being disfellowshipped. And so I really didn't have much interest in returning. And this was back around 2000. And a short period of time after that, my counselor, who had changed my life, had made such an impact on my life, passed away. And because of the indoctrination, I couldn't imagine never seeing him again. And so, we had believed that the earth was going to be turned into a paradise and stuff, and people that had died would be brought back. And so I could never imagine never seeing and never being able to speak to him again. And so that's what pulled me back into the organization. And then 8 years late, so I got involved, did the best that I could, dealt with a little bit of PTSD and depression and anxiety and stuff, but kind of trudged away through it. And then John and I met in 2008.
Okay, so right on cue.
Well, he wants to tell his story too.
He wants to tell his story. So I'm sorry, you met in 2008?
And
8, okay. And when did you get married?
2008.
Okay, waste no time. Okay, what did that look like? Because we're in 2025. Well, obviously, there's 18 years more of the story, or 16 or something.
Yeah, 17. It'll be 17 in December. Well, it's been 17 since we met. Well,
And let me, before we do it, and I always ask, and you don't have to answer, but are there children between?
No, not between.
I have 2 with my first marriage, and he had 2 as well.
Okay.
I had 2 from 2 previous marriages. My son is no longer with us.
Okay.
And Yeah. That's a whole different story.
Okay. Okay, so take us, because now we have you're back and she's in and you're married and you're both Jehovah's Witnesses and you're both practicing and and what could possibly go wrong from here?
Well, the weekend that we got married, of course, he wasn't baptized yet, right? So in order for us to we arranged to have him get baptized that morning, and then we got married that afternoon.
We went to an assembly that wasn't our assigned assembly, just so I could get baptized that day at the assembly. And then that night we got married. Now I didn't have to be baptized to get married, but in order to be in good standing, to not be judged, to be married by one of the elders in the congregation, that's what was needed. And I was at the time ready. Like I said before, I had only not been baptized in prison because of having gotten in that fight and going to solitary confinement.
He says ready. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, so basically, my understanding is then that kind of they almost like re-indoctrinated you when you were in prison. They kind of brought you back into the fold because you were in a vulnerable state. Would
Oh,
that be
absolutely.
somewhat correct?
So to a certain extent, yes. But although I'd never lost the indoctrination to a certain extent, because
Okay, because you were still scared of the
right,
Armageddon and
yes, I mean, I was living in fear for decades before that, thinking Armageddon was any moment, and I'd definitely die for sure because I wasn't living my life accordingly. So that just fed my addiction, actually, because I didn't want to feel it.
So the first 5 years of our marriage, he was still toxic with the addiction. And so the first 5 years was him battling those he ended up having surgery. In the first 3 years of our marriage, we had 9 surgeries between the two of us. And he would come out of the surgery. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. And he would be on these pain meds, right?
I
And
knew that was coming. Yep.
pain meds. And so he had knee issues. So this one doctor would give him Vicodin and just like nothing. I mean,
Yeah, like candy.
it was like candy. Yeah.
Yeah. Back then, this is when the opiate crisis really started. It was back in the late 1990s and the early 2000s. And now it is, of course, we all know where it is today. But that's back then, they were just giving it away like candy. Yeah.
Well, he would get his prescription filled, and then he would go to refill it, and the PA would cut him off, and he would go to the street to satisfy that addiction. And then he'd end up back in the ER. They'd get him back on the thing. It was just a cycle that went on for 5 years.
It was really bad for Shannon here because, like I said, I got 12 and a half years clean and sober. We've been together for almost 17. So there was a number of times where I disappeared for days, turned my phone off, and she was left without knowing until finally she was like, I've had enough. And it was perfect timing. I was just ready. It was no longer just to keep it short. It no longer did its job, right? It didn't take away the anxiety or depression. It added to it. So I was like, okay, it would have been I've already lost 2 marriages before this. And so I didn't want to go through that again and keep doing this to people I love. So I was ready.
I'm going to just stay on topic with the addiction, but I'm going to just go off a little bit because I'm just curious. Would you say that the opiates, you could just mention that you were tired, you were done, but you were probably still drinking, right? And
you know what? I haven't had a drink since 2006 because by that time, yeah.
Oh, so you were doing the opioids, but not. But you were dry. You were
scared
dry.
to death to drink.
Okay.
Because by that time, over the course of decades, waking up on the street with cops standing over me, waking up in the hospital, waking up in jail, waking up in the back of an ambulance, losing 2 marriages, I was done with drinking.
You can get scared straight if there's enough bottoms because as you know, our bottoms have trap doors, and
I would drive and wake up, I don't know where my car was, wake up all bruised and battered, my hands all beat up, my face and not knowing what happened. And with the harder drugs, that never happened. And that was a whole different course of consequences, though.
So did you use AA then at this point? At this point, did you use a 12-step program to beat your
Yeah,
addiction?
first AA meeting. Say that again.
I said, did
Did
you
you
at that
use
point,
AA?
were you using a 12-step program did you use a 12-step program to get sober, to get off of the pain meds?
Yes. My first AA meeting was like in 1982 or 3.
So the seed was planted much earlier.
Yeah, almost. I was a chronic relapser in and out for a long time.
But what really got you off the opioids? Because opioids are not something that you can. So alcohol, we can quit drinking, but you really should do it on doctor supervision. And the cocaine and all the other drugs have their different types of detox. Opioids, you can detox on your own, but there's new medicine out there and there's new treatments out there. And so I'm curious.
I did. That's a good question. I actually went to a pain clinic, and they put me on
Methadone.
not methadone, but the other one,
Suboxone?
Suboxone.
Suboxone.
Yes, thank you. Yep. So I actually got addicted to that for a while.
Suboxone is both the devil and the angel. It will get you off the opiates, but then you're stuck on the Suboxone. I know that because I was on that for 15 years. So
Yeah.
I know the story.
I managed to get off it.
Good for you. Good for you, because that is hard.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, when I went, I'll tell you what, February 13th, 2013,
Went to the hospital.
threw up my hands, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I need help with Shannon. I told Shannon this, and she'd had enough too. We went to the psych ward at the hospital. I spent 5 or 6 days there. My best recollection, and they detoxing. From there, I went to a treatment center in Kirkland, Washington. And 3 days in, I did nothing but sleep. And they basically let me do that. But I walked up to the front desk and I said, look, I'm ready to break a window and slit my own throat. I didn't mean it, but I knew. See, there was a psychiatric hospital just next door. And I knew that if I said something like that, they would send me there and I would get medicated. A half hour later, I was like I was drooling. They gave me something. I don't know what it was, but
Haldol will make you drool.
kind of rocking in my chair like this. And I remember Shannon mentioning that before.
Okay. So we tackled the drug problem, the alcohol problem, I'm assuming. And so we're around 2013-ish, but we're still in the cult.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay. How do we get out of the cult?
So a couple of things. So for me, like way back with the domestic violence, it cracked. I never trusted elders again after that situation. So there was that crack. So I started like doing more, a little bit more self-advocacy. I went to school, I got my degrees and stuff like that. So even though I came back, it did not have the same control over me. I didn't run to the elders for everything. I didn't tell them nothing. It was like I was just going in and going to the meetings and stuff. And there were a couple of different, with one of the things too with the domestic violence, like John had made the comment about, you think you're so different. So in one of the disfellowshipping meetings, one of the elders, I was like talking about the domestic violence, and he said, I talked about the black eye, and he goes, what makes you think you're so different? We've had other sisters come to the hall with a black eye before. And so it was like I lost complete respect, and they no longer had that level of control over me. And so I just never trusted them as much. But we would hear things like at the assembly. And I remember one of them for sure that like really started another crack was like, there may be a time in the future that we are given direction from Jehovah that may not sound humanly sound. And
that's in print.
And we need to follow the guidance of Jehovah. So
the governing body.
Yeah, and so that really stood out to me. And then I never felt like I had like all the people felt very, very superficial to me. And when we lost Tomas, John's son, when he was murdered,
23.
I got an email from one of the elders asking me to turn in my time, and I said, our son was just murdered. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And that was all we got. So I really started becoming bitter. And then when we came to North Carolina, when we moved to North Carolina, the lack of love, the lack of support, we're like, this is ridiculous. And so we just weren't going. And then a friend of ours who had left the cult, had started kind of dripping a few things. And so I personally did a search on 607 BCE, and also found out about the ARC, the Australian Royal Commission. And I watched those, and it was like the dominoes it just fell. From then I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't real.
Yeah.
Could you explain that
She
to
mentioned
the
2000.
audience?
Which part? The Australian Royal Commission? Or
Yes,
the 607.
both.
So one of the theories or prophecies that Jehovah's Witnesses have is that they said that Babylon fell in 607 BCE, and that there's a specific date that and prophecy that's supposed to be aligned to that date that points them to 1914. And 1914 was the year that supposedly Jesus came invisibly to re-rule. And it was also at one point when the governing body and the anointed were supposed to be, everybody was supposed to be in heaven by then. And they've changed the rules a couple of times over the years. So that's one of them. And then one of the things, and this also woke me up because of the Australian Royal Commission was an investigation that they did in several different organizations, and Jehovah's Witnesses was one of them. And they really deep dove their processes when it came with Jehovah's Witnesses when it came to child sexual abuse. And hearing a governing body member get on camera and lie, say the exact opposite of what we had been told within the congregation and within the organization forever and ever and ever, that really, really woke me up. And I have a couple of friends who were victims of child sexual abuse. And one of them, there was a case in Montana even where the top attorney for Jehovah's Witnesses actually provided an affidavit, and in that affidavit he lied. And that was, my friend was the victim. And so it was like, this is like, it brought back a lot of even the domestic violence stuff and the way that they treated me with my domestic violence. And it was like, this is a pattern in the way that they are protecting these individuals within the organization when they're doing this type of horrific behavior. And so I'm like, I don't want to be a part of an organization that would treat people that way and that would be so cruel and so horrific, to women and children.
But and you are aware that the Catholic Church did that, and the Luz del Mundo cult did that. All of the major religious organizations that got caught with pedophilia, I don't want to say priests but the clergy, yeah, they all got caught, and it was all global or public or national news, but all they did was move these priests around. I think one or two of them might have gotten arrested and are doing time, and some of them hung themselves in jail or whatever. It was happening all across, because I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I worked in the church in the 90s down in New Jersey, and I saw it firsthand, and they just swept it under the rug. They did it their best job. So what you were seeing wasn't anything different. It was just
Right.
It was like,
The thing that was
but it's
different,
broken.
Yeah.
oh, it's broken.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
Don't go anywhere. More Cultimatum is coming up.
The thing that was different for me, from my perspective, is that organization that I was a part of wasn't supposed to be doing that kind of stuff.
No, of course
No,
not.
So having that wake-up call, and especially knowing people and having people, one of them was a very good friend of mine from high school, and another one was a friend that I'd known for 30 years. And so I was like, I can't support this.
In my experience, coming from a very religious upbringing to not being in any organized religion over the past 40 something years, I have seen, and then now doing the podcast, and I have seen that as people who go to these organized religious foundations, I don't even know what to call them anymore because I don't believe in them, churches and religions. In the beginning, you go to these services and everything is all pristine and little girls in white dresses and everything. But all the stuff, the pedophilia that's going on behind the scenes in the basements and behind the whatever and the wherever it's happening, we don't really get to see it or hear it or find out about it for 10, 15, 20 years, like in your case. And I grew up in the Catholic Church. I was a choir boy, a altar boy, did a bunch of other stuff when my parents forced me into it. And I ended up going to a religious high school and a religious college, very famous one. And I still didn't know anything about it until in my 30s or 40s when it broke. And I was blind to what was going on. And anyway, what I'm hearing is more and more and more is like people like stick around in these cults, and then they hear about it, and then they finally, when the evidence slaps them in the face, or like in your case, especially when you had a death in your family and they did nothing. Nothing. So
We got a card. We got a card from somebody.
A Hallmark? Was it Hallmark?
I don't even think it was Hallmark.
Not the elders, but
It was an elder's wife. We got a card from an
They
elder's
probably
wife.
printed it out from like HP.com or something. So
before we get too far away from the molesting subject, I just want to say that in the abuse in any way is that the witnesses have this two witness rule that you may have heard of before, where
yes, yep.
unless an additional witness that comes forward about the allegation, then it's really swept under the floor. And that really provides this, like Shannon was saying, a perfect breeding ground for abusive and pedophiles, all sorts of things that go on.
Absolutely, because pedophiles do not do it in front of an audience. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in front of an audience.
And if I told you the amount of drugs and alcohol abuse that the priests in the Roman Catholic Church are involved in, and I can only imagine, I shouldn't say this, but I go to a 12-step organization and I see a lot of Hasidics and Orthodox Jewish people go to those meetings as well. So this becoming religious and serving like a clergy or what, it doesn't absolve us from being human, from falling prey to the human, what do you call that, when sins, the original, one of the original sins. So okay, take us through to where. Go ahead, Melody. I'm sorry.
I wanted to touch a little bit on Shannon's analogy with getting the cracks. So the cracks were already there. You were starting to get all these cracks, and I have used that analogy before, like all these little things that happen and you get a little crack in your plate, and then there's finally something that happened that shatters your plate, which basically it shatters your faith in that organization. So I'm hearing that for you, Shannon, that was those things that you found out doing your research online and the things about the abuse and stuff. John, what shattered your plate? And was this in 2023, just to confirm? Is that about when you guys actually left? Was it only 2 years ago?
No, it was a year ago.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Wow.
But you see, it didn't happen all at once. We just, Shannon mentioned it before. In 2013, I got clean and sober in February is when I went to treatment. Now, they put it in print, I think, somewhere later in the year, toward the end of the year, that we must be obedient to the governing body, even if it doesn't make sense from a human standpoint. That's when my fog had started to lift from the drug abuse.
Takes 10 years, yeah.
I was really starting to notice things, be hyper vigilant and aware. That was like the first. That's what stands out to me as my first real red flag. I was like, wait a minute, and then I would try to bring up things with Shannon over the course of a decade or more, and she was really quick to shut me down. I mean, because I was like, well, they're imperfect men. We have the truth here, so I can I could look past it. But I was still a free thinker, thinking for myself, not fully indoctrinated. And then my son died in 2023, 10 years later after that. And I was like, okay. And I knew that the elders knew about my son. And weeks went by, 2 to 3 weeks before I got a call from one of them. Shannon got the email from one brother asking for the time that she had spent in the ministry, and nothing came from that. She said that our son had died. And then I got a call a few weeks later from one saying how sorry it was about.
It was actually to let you know that somebody else had died. It was when
Really?
Jim died. It was when Jim died. Yeah. And then you're like, well, Tomas died.
Okay. So there was never any support there that really just, I really started to cool down my faith.
If you can't get support from the religious organization that you belong to and that you've been spending tithe money on for how many years?
Yeah.
If somebody in your family passes or any, let's say, serious illness, and just the church is, I say church in religious connotation, if you can't go to them to get solace and get support, what's the purpose? I mean, that's how I was brought up, is you go to the priest, you go to church, you pray to God, and it sounds to me like they did none of that.
Yeah, no, they didn't.
I want to ask you something, because you brought it up, and it goes back to sobriety. You said something about, I think it was 10 years. It was 2014, and your son was, no, 2014, you got sober and clean, and then it was about 2024 is when you left, give or take, right? So do you know in the 12 steps what they say about the marbles?
Marbles?
Yeah. So you get your marbles back after 5 years of sobriety, but
Yes.
after 10 years, you learn how to use them.
I have heard that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it kind of makes sense, because at 10-year mark is when you left JW. It kind of like the marbles kicked in. You learned that it was not. So I don't want to put words in your mouth. So take us. We have about 5 minutes left. So take us through how you got out of JW, and then we're going to ask your 2 final questions.
Okay. Well, we moved from Seattle to North Carolina last year, and we had a friend who had been an elder. I was having all these doubts. Shannon was, but we actually, let me back up a little bit. We actually went to the Kingdom Hall there in North Carolina. And in a nutshell, we went there. We had just gotten there. We had all our stuff in store, coming for the storage to be put in a storage from a moving company. We needed help. We knew no one. So we went to the Kingdom Hall. We figured we were going to give it one last shot, even though we were having doubts. And they basically turned us away, said no to contact the brothers and sisters in that area, because it was like the next town over. And we were just like, wow. So we left there that meeting that day, that Sunday, just feeling disgusted and kind of defeated. And then Shannon started doing more research, found out some things. Everything fell apart. I contacted a friend of ours that was an elder who had left. And I asked him, look, what gives? And he came out with a bunch of things. He said, basically, everything that the elders were told is to protect the organization at all costs. The organization, they hardly ever reflect back or use the Bible as a reference. It's all about policies that the organization has and whatnot. And that really just knocked his wind out when he became an elder. So he ended up leaving.
It's one big lie. They just tell the lie in a different way, right?
It is.
Yeah.
So I have one more
And so
question before we ask our final questions, which is, I want to know what inspired you guys to start speaking out or start your YouTube channel and to start to help other people who are trying to leave or in the process of leaving.
In 2016, I received a cancer diagnosis and went through that journey and learned a whole bunch about myself and learned about how to love myself and a couple of different ways of looking at things. So starting that critical thinking, right? Even turning it on even higher and stuff. So when I after I got through that journey, I had a lot of people that really encouraged me to get into coaching. And so I started looking at that and I thought, well, maybe I need to coach domestic violence. Well, maybe I need to coach somebody that's going through a cancer journey with self-advocacy, or maybe it's with corporate toxicity, because of my degrees and stuff is in organizational psychology. Or maybe we need to do the addiction, or maybe, tied to the addiction and codependency and all this kind of stuff. And so we ended up both getting involved with we joined a network called Ultra under Brendan Burchard, and both became certified coaches under his piece. And so here we thought, okay, we're gonna focus on cancer. We're gonna focus on this and this and this. And then we woke up from the organization and we were like, oh,
This is it.
that's what we're supposed to do. And so because there's the domestic violence in the organization, there's the illnesses that come from from having such strong emotion, being depressed and stuff like that can have an effect on your health and stuff. And then there's the addiction, and there's a high level of suicide. So we could tie that in with losing Tomas as well. So it called us. That's one of the things. And starting our YouTube channel, actually approached by another XJW and asked us if we would do it.
We became aware. Evan became aware of the need. I had no clue that there was so many out there, millions of people worldwide who have been either left or been kicked out and shunned. Like, for example, I have this one friend online who is in Nigeria, in a small village there, and she was recently disfellowshipped, and she has no one. And she her whole family shuns her. She recently had malaria and didn't have any help, and that just made me more aware that there's so many people out there that need support.
I think I make a lot of predictions on this podcast, and I may not be around to find out if they ever come true, but I think JW, the Jehovah's Witnesses, will be one of the cults that will come down over the next, let's say, 25, 50 years. I think a lot of people are fleeing. And I'm seeing a lot of the fact that on this podcast alone, Melody, how many?
Gosh,
10?
I think close to 10.
More?
Somewhere between 8 and 10 of our 90 episodes are.
So the majority of people that come on our podcast are XJW. That seems to be the most common cult that people are fleeing right now.
Okay.
Yes.
During COVID, many people woke up during COVID.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So all the other cults are experiencing it as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But JW, I see, and if you scroll TikTok, and just maybe it's because it's the feed and I'm subscribed to a lot of them, but I'm just getting one after the other, and they're all speaking out. So hopefully it'll come down. Okay, we got to wrap up. I'm going to ask you. So you're both individuals. So you can't share this answer, I would think. And we didn't really get into, so you left and you no longer, so you're out, right? You disfellowshipped, you're out.
We are soul jumpers.
Yes.
So
you haven't been officially disfellowshipped.
We're not, we're not playing by their rules. We're not playing their games. We're not any of that. So we defined what we did and we soul jumped. So we got out. And so just left.
There's different phrases and stuff that they use. Disfellowship being one of them, or
fading,
or disassociating. There's people that write letters of disassociation. I no longer want to be a part of this organization. We're not going to play their game. We're not going to go by those labels.
You just walked away.
We just walked away, and we're saying that. So when people say, that, we say we soul jumped.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I like that because it takes the power out of their hands.
It does.
You're putting the power back in your own hands. Yeah.
Where are you today in your faith? So now that you're not with them, are you with any organization? Are you taking some time off? And do you believe in God?
So I don't know what I don't know, and that's okay. And that was
Nice.
one of the things that I learned through the cancer journey. Of all the things
Uh-huh.
that you end up learning from other things, the cancer journey taught me that. So I don't know what I don't know, and it's okay. And I listen to kind of what the universe says, and I have questions. I think if Jesus existed, he was a pretty nice guy. I have questions about who he called Father.
Yeah.
So for me, Andrew, you'd be familiar with this. The God of my understanding
Correct.
has completely dissolved on. And that's okay. I'm not devastated. I'm not heartbroken. This is a new adventure for me that that's been thrust at me, right? And so I'm doing a lot of research. I'm developing a new belief system. But no, I really have no desire at this point to be part of any other religion ever, because I believe that if there is a God, I can have a relationship with him without a religion or an organization.
Or brick and mortar building, because in the 12 steps, and I know where you're going with that, is that a God of my understanding or a higher power. We don't, other than maybe going to an AA meeting in a church, it's not a religious meeting. I come home and I pray to my higher power, which
Yeah.
is my higher power, a God of my understanding, which is what you just said. But you two are just out a year. So
Yeah.
you haven't even had a real chance to deconstruct any of this, I think.
Right.
And I think you're doing it
We
through the
actually have been working on it, though. The cancer journey started it. It actually started that. And doing the personal development work that we were doing
Okay.
as we were going along, that has helped us move so much quicker.
Oh. It's evident.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
You were
It's
partially
very evident.
deconstructed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
We're really running out of time, but there's a term called PMO, which you probably heard, physically and mentally ill. It sounds like you guys were physically out a long time ago, or mentally out, I should say.
Or
You were
started to
physically
be.
and
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
filming.
Yeah. So, okay, Melody, your question.
Okay, my final question is, if there is somebody who's in the JW organization that might be listening to this podcast, or somebody that just got out, or somebody that's thinking about joining, what would be your words of advice to them?
Do your own research. Yeah. Don't take anybody's word for anything. If you have any, ask questions, right?
Very
If
good.
you're thinking about joining, don't just believe blindly. Look at the proof. Like the 607 BCE Shannon brought up earlier, that disintegrates when you do your own research. All other scholars and historians point to 586 BCE, which completely would deconstruct the JW
Teaching.
Yeah.
prophecy and teaching.
Oh, prophecy,
Everything falls
yeah.
apart from there. Everything falls apart from there.
And for me, I would say, like, what I concur what John was saying. The other thing is make sure that you know yourself and
Yes.
know that you can trust yourself and have your authenticity. And so that you are being guided by what really makes sense to you. And if it doesn't feel right, you've got to trust your gut and build that self-love, because that's how we've gotten to where we've been today. And we're
Excellent.
happier. We are happier than we have been in decades.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
no longer having guilt, no longer having fear,
Yeah.
and just being able to have even a better relationship between the two of us.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Each person or guest that we interview, we hear that they were in the cult years, they were miserable, anxiety, and yada, and when they're out, they're in. So,
Yeah.
same thing. It's
For sure.
just where somebody upstairs, and I don't mean like all the way upstairs, somebody in the government would listen to some of this stuff and do something. I don't know. We're recording this on the day that I found out that the Kingdom of God Church was raided in Florida last month. And I saw it this morning in passing, and I'm like, how did we miss this? So we'll talk about this in the outro, Melody. But
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's this church called the Kingdom of God Global Church, and they were raided for everything from pedophilia to tax evasion to all this other stuff. And I don't know where they're at, but they're coming down. So cults they're finally, the law enforcement is starting to take notice.
Yeah.
So anyway,
That's good.
Shannon
Okay.
and John, thank you so
Yes.
much.
Yes.
For
Thank you
joining
for
us.
sharing your story. And I'm just going to say that we are very sorry for the loss of your son. I can't even imagine, and I
Yes.
don't ever want to
Yes.
imagine the pain that must be to endure. But we are so sorry for your loss. And we just thank you for your strength, your honesty, and
Yes.
for coming on the show and sharing about your healing and your process and your journey.
Thank you, Melanie. I appreciate that. Those kind words. And
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you for having us here.
Yep. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Yes,
our pleasure.
you
And
too.
good luck with your YouTube. And
Thank
go
you.
get them.
Thanks.
Go get them.
Thank
Okay?
you.
You got
All
it.
right. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
And once again, we want to thank John and Shannon for coming on the show and sharing their story with us. And it sounds like it won't be too long, and we're going to be hearing from them again. I think we're going to do a part 2 more towards the healing process. So hopefully that will happen. And I'm not just saying this and it won't come to fruition, but that is the plan.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know if the audience will have heard it by the time this airs, but there was another episode we did with somebody, and halfway through it, we realized it was a 2-part episode. Absolutely, because the amount of information and the story, the depth of the story. So, in this one, we had at the last moment, the husband decided to join, and rightfully so, because he was very much part of the story. And
Yes.
maybe it was we just didn't think that this could have been a 2-parter. So we recorded it, and at the last minute decided to invite them back. And I just wanted to tell the audience. So we'd like to have
and
them
I think
come back.
I think it will be good to focus more on the healing side and have a little bit of a different episode too. So that's the plan.
Absolutely. I agree.
But what an amazing inspirational story for both of them.
Well,
That was very very tragic in a lot of ways, but it's so inspiring where they are right now and so quickly.
The death of their son, and I want to say it out loud, the murder of their son, which had nothing to do with JW, just to make it
Yes.
clear, but the fact that they went through that trauma, that, oh my God, you and I
Yes.
both have children. We can't
Yes.
imagine that. They go
No.
through that. And I said this in the episode. How can a church or a religious organization, I don't care if it's, a little guy like gospel guy on the corner or the Roman Catholic Church, they are there for this type of stuff that happens in your life. You go to when I was younger, we went to the priests in church to help us get through life. And there was no such as very back early 60s and 70s when psychiatry was coming on the scene, but it was like $500 for a psychiatrist back then, and it was a real, like a Freudian doctor, not like it is today. So you would go to a church, you would go to a priest to get any kind of advice. And I remember walking into rectories all the way up to my age 30, asking for advice on various things. How could this poor couple lose their son and not get Jehovah's Witness to this? Just blows my mind. So that's all I have to say about that.
Exactly. Well, they got a card, Andrew.
They got a card. Oh, how nice.
I don't know. I'm with you. I just can't. I don't know how long it would take me to be able to even feel like I could function if I lost one of my kids. To just be so flippant about that is really, I can see why that might have been their last straw. Yeah.
See, I don't know what the thing is in JW when you die. Do you? Was it your cult?
Basically, they believe that when you're dead, you're dead, and that unless you're a JW, then you will be part of the 144,000 and you'll rise again or something like that.
So we don't know if the son was in the church in the JW or not, but still, I don't want to belabor this, but it's just bizarre that they got no support, and so.
Yes, unfortunate to say the least, to say the very least, just very sad and unfortunate. But we do want to thank John and Shannon for coming on, sharing their even the hard parts of their story, because there were lots of hard parts there for both of them. And as always, we want to thank all of you as well for tuning into Cultimatum. We do appreciate your support in our mission to expose the truth and highlight the voices of these survivors.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep listening to all of our latest episodes.
And you can also follow Cultimatum on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for more content and updates.
Don't forget to join our Facebook group, Cultimatum Podcast, where we dive deeper into these important topics. And this morning I did post on there. People might say that I don't post on there, but this cult that I found that was raided in Florida, I had to comment on it. So go check out the Facebook group, Cultimatum, and of course, Melody's group, which she's going to tell you about right now.
Yes, and if you are a cult survivor and you're looking for additional support, you can join the Cult Escape and Healing group on Facebook.
If you're interested in more of my work, check out my other podcasts or just go to the Anonymous Andrew Podcast Studios.com. It's a website and it's got all of our podcasts and blogs and a bunch of information. Go check out everything over there.
And if you have a story related to cults or human trafficking that you would like to share with us, please email us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
If you'd like to support the show, you can help us cover the production costs by buying us a cup of coffee. Just follow the link in our show notes.
And as always, stay safe, stay informed, and remember, you are not alone.
The views, opinions, and personal experiences shared by guests on this podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts or producers. Cultimatum, the Cult and Human Trafficking Podcast, its hosts, producers, and affiliate entities, including Anonymous Andrew Podcast Studios, make no representation or warranties regarding the accuracy or reliability of any statements made by guests or third parties. Any references to specific individuals, groups, or organizations are for informational and educational purposes only. Their inclusion does not imply endorsement, opposition, or any formal position by Cultimatum or its affiliates. This podcast does not seek to label, accuse, or defame any religion, movement, or organization, and expressly disclaims all liability for guest statements or listener interpretations. Cultimatum is intended solely to promote discussion, awareness, and educational surrounding cult dynamics, coercion, and human behavior. Listener discretion is advised.